you have a point-to-point, although I believe you've connected it now, so it can do continuous.
No, it used to be a loop. I disconnected it, so it's point-to-point. I haven't connected it yet.
Yeah, I've always sort of thought that point-to-point would be interesting, but since I'm more interested in doing operations, point-to-point is just going to be fine with me.
Got it.
I have already scaled out my room and created a model of my room so that I could put together different concepts, table layouts inside the model and to scale.
Got it.
So, like I said, I anticipate an island coming out of the room, and because I have a large door opening. Actually, the room is sort of like in this house layout is a formal living room, if you want to think of it that way, with a large opening. And I figured, I could, why not just put an extension out into the little foyer, and I would have a lot more area in which to do operations and switching and that sort of a thing.
Cool.
Most of the guys in my club, unfortunately, just like to watch trains go around in a circle. And after about 5 loops, I kind of zone out.
I would
want
think.
to do something else.
Good.
But
Cool.
yeah, we have, in our quote clubhouse, which is one of our members' homes who has a detached garage, he created 4 concentric tracks that are essentially in a dog bone, but they just go around and around because that's what he. So, anyways, bottom line.
Hey, Chip, I have to tell you that when I was kind of going through my phase of really being interested in City Point, I went down there. I don't live that far away from City Point, so I went down there and just covered that whole area. And there's a lot that's really interesting to look at.
Yes.
And as I was going down towards some of the industrial area, the industrial wharfs and everything else, suddenly out of the middle of nowhere, this was right after 9/11.
Right.
And so suddenly out of the middle of nowhere, this guy from Homeland Security came up, and he was not a happy camper. He wanted to know, real short hair, and he wanted to know why in the world I was scouting around. I was taking pictures and everything else. Right. Well, I turned around and I went to my car and I pulled out this box. I'd done exactly what maps, charts, drawings, photographs, because there's more photographs, I think, at City Point than almost any other place that I've found in this research. And he looked at me and he said, okay, fine, I believe you. Just next time, if you want to do this, give me a call and I'll give you a detailed tour. But I thought I was going to be hauled away.
Well, it's interesting because when the group went to City Point as a convention, I was not able to make it at that time. I went like the week after because I was also going to a memorial service for a friend of mine who passed, and it was a reenactor. And so I've been to City Point. I've been to the Petersburg battlefield and took numerous photographs. Although I must admit, when I was standing in front of the Dictator mortar, you know where that is, the gun pit before that. I was looking at that and I said, a week ago, there were a group of friends of mine that were standing there. And I was thinking of like one of these old Civil War photographs where there's a group of guys and you go back to the same location. I was waiting for your ghost to speak to me.
Yeah.
Cool.
Hey, Chip.
Yeah.
Chip, if you're still doing the planning, I recommend AnyRail software.
AnyRail software?
AnyRail. I've used that. It's great. It doesn't allow you to cheat on curves or turnouts or anything. It's got a whole selection of different track you can get, and just put in. And the initial version's free. Mm-hmm. And very quickly, I spent the $59 to get the full version, and it's been fun for years.
$59 is very reasonable price for any kind of software.
So here's what I'd like to do. Let's just continue and give you guys each about 2 minutes each, and just give us an idea where you're at with whatever you're doing. So DC, why don't you pick it up?
Oh, okay. Well, if you notice, I've been coughing a little bit today. I'm working on the train room. And today's project was cutting concrete. So I have a perimeter drain. In Delaware, rather than putting French drains on the outside of the structure, they allow the water to come in and then drain it into a sub pump. So that's what I've been working on today. I finished putting insulation on the 2 ducts running through the ceiling. The ceiling lights are in place. I took care of Don, the water meter issue. My Donna's son came over on Sunday, and wasn't originally what I planned, but we couldn't get the water shut off at the street. We didn't want to break it, so he's a plumber. So we moved the one shut-off valve right up next to the ceiling, and he was able to turn the meter, so I can probably get that 48-inch high bench work now.
Cool.
That's kind of what I'm still working on.
That's great. Thank you, DC. How about you, Joel? What's up with you since we talked last?
Since we talked last was last week. I'm building the addition to Alexandria City for the Pioneer Mill that Bernie so kindly printed out for me on his laser. And that building is getting ready to go in, and I will then be completing the rail transfer point to the right, so General Haupt can write his letter to the War Department doing his cost analysis study. Does that meet your goals there, General Haupt?
You're on mute, Bern.
Okay.
Yes, very good. Keep up the good work.
There's a citation.
Okay.
For you.
Next project will be a new T-track module for Devereaux Station, the Y. So we have a turnaround point on the portable layout. Okay, that's where I'm at.
That's great. For those of you that might not know, Joel's in N scale. Mr. Ott, what's happening with you these days? The book is out, yes? You're on mute, John. Oh, there you go.
Right, yeah. The book is not out. I'm putting together new proposals for different publishers. The first run, as I related in the last meeting, the first run got sidetracked by COVID-19, and I really don't know what's going on there. So the book is prepared. All I have to do is find a publisher for it.
Good. How long? So that's just like shots on goal. You keep going after them until somebody bites?
I'm sorry, Tom, you'll have to try that again.
Yeah, is that like you just keep going after them until somebody bites, or is it a constant negotiation with one or two?
Yeah, well, the negotiations happen after somebody bites, and I've learned from the first one that the publisher first takes the book, the manuscript, sends it out for review, peer review, and if you get a positive peer review report, then they start the negotiations.
Got it.
And we were in the middle of the negotiations with the first publisher when the epidemic hit. And my repeated attempts at trying to get in touch with them and get them to pay attention to the project have come to naught.
Yep, sorry. Well, eventually.
Yeah, eventually.
Thank you, John. Charlie, what have you been up to, man? Everybody know Charlie Taylor?
I'm sorry?
I was asking everybody, does everybody know you? Anybody not know you? Yeah, everybody knows you.
Well, I feel like I crawled out from under a rock this last year and discovered John Ott's work online, and that's some amazing stuff. And I'm glad to see you. We just just got rid of all of our grandchildren for the summer. And so I'm kind of back in the land of the living, at least for a month or two. I'm O scale, and I got some bad news that Mike's Train House is closing. You know, I don't think there's much of a HO, but they are certainly a major vendor, kind of a major designer, and I think they're going to close totally in 2021. That's bad for railroad in general.
Mm.
But anyway, O scale, and the railroad I have is the Memphis and Charleston, and currently I'm redoing Adams Freight House, which is kind of one of the signature buildings there in the yard in Chattanooga, and also doing beginning the machine shop at Huntsville.
Oh, right.
And there's a great map that the curator in the Huntsville Museum of Transportation put me onto. It's got the footprint of the entire shop, you know, the roundhouse, the smokestack, and everything, and every single piece of track in Huntsville in the war. So I'm trying to match the footprint. I'll probably use that East Round Top. You know, there's a great thing online. Is that right? East Broad Top. It's a railroad a little bit later, but I can probably use the same machines that they had in there for that. And I'm contemplating a approximately 150 foot tall smokestack. I'm trying to get my mind around that, and you know how to build that accurately. So, and when we went to Savannah, you know, last meeting or so, they had this smokestack that's just sitting out there isolated, and what they showed us were these underground passages that would create this draw, and so you had all the smoke that normally be released into the blacksmith shop and the machine shop. And the boiler room would be taken underground and at the stack. And so it kind of explains a lot of these isolated smokestacks in these 19th century shop areas. So that's all I have to report for right now.
Got it. So
sorry I missed Jerry's cotton on the last meeting. And you have more to say on cotton today, or?
I think there might be a couple of questions from last time. Jerry?
Okay.
You want to give us an update since I called you out?
I've got a few things going on. I'm doing some digital modeling for Chris Keonis, who owns Musket Miniatures. And I've pretty much worked through all the odd scales, and I'm about to get into the O scale portion of it. And the thing I'm working on right now is the 1855 six-mule Army supply wagon, which, I've got a drawing of the actual wagon in great detail. So that's going to be kind of an interesting undertaking. If anybody wants to contact me regarding the cotton stuff, go ahead and put them in touch with me. I've got a lot of information on it. Hello?
Yeah.
Okay.
Ooh.
Great.
Bernie, what are you holding there?
Who are you talking to? Oh, Bernie?
Jerry, I need some of those. I built this about a year ago and haven't made any progress on it. Wait,
move it to your right a little bit. Oh, the wagons.
Okay, sure. Yep.
It's an Army wagon.
Yep.
But I was hoping someone would 3D print one so I wouldn't have to make all of these by hand.
Well, Chris is going to be, he's going to be putting them out probably in O scale. What he does, he takes, I do the drawing, the digital work, and then I 3D print it on my resin printer, which gets down to like a 0.5 thousandth of an inch. And then I send those out to Chris, and he uses that as masters to make molds. And
And
then
I want 20.
okay, I'll let him know, and that'll get him kicked
I take
in
the,
gear on
you need a
the
deposit, let me know.
because we've gone all through the caissons and the limbers and all the different gun tubes that'll mount on that carriage, and yeah, we've done the blacksmith wagon, the battery wagons that went with the artillery units. So the next step is the supply wagon, and that's in the works right now.
Are those all in O scale?
Well, the first run through, I do them in 1/43rd scale, which is a weird wargamer scale, and that seems to be his major market.
Oh, okay.
And then I did them in 1/56th scale, which is another wargamer scale. Then they're going to be pulled into O scale. It's once I have it done, it's easy to pull it into a different scale because that's just a matter of scaling the model files up and down.
Right.
And so the O scale stuff, and he wants to finish out his offering of HO scale as well.
Right.
As they get smaller, they'll lose detail because there's detail you can't pick
Right.
up in the smaller scales.
Right.
But the O scale, which is 1/48, and the 1/43rd scale stuff, you can get a lot of detail on that. Some of it, what he's doing is casting in pewter, so they'll actually be metal. Some of the finer detail stuff, I think he's doing in resin.
Man, I
And
want
by the
20.
way, Chris just joined our group, so I think DC, I think you got a application from him, and I think he's on board. So his interest is Vicksburg, so he's a little bit late joining us, but oh well.
Very good.
That's
That's
good.
great news.
Yeah, very
He is
good.
a member.
Cool. Good. Thank you. Let's see. Mr. Borkman, what are you up to these days? Anything? David?
There we go. Took a minute to get unmuted here. I'm interested in Civil War era locomotives and then equipment is along with that. And because I'm interested in locomotives, I do O scale. Much easier to see and work with. I've been a three-rail O-gauger for quite a while, and I do modular railroading. So I have modules that I take to train shows around the eastern part of the United States. Most recently, I've gotten involved in animations. And one of the animations that I'm trying to work on is a cotton press that leads right from what Jerry was talking about last meet. So I photographed and measured a lot of the Tarboro cotton press, and that's what Jerry has already worked on. So give me some time, and I'll have an O-scale cotton press built up with a mule that goes round and round and round when you push the button, and a screw that goes down, down, down. I'm not sure if I'll actually press cotton with it, but it'll look like it's operating. So when that thing's built, I'll take it to one of the train shows that I go to. The one I've aimed this one toward is the Trains exhibit down at the Southern Museum of Civil War and Locomotive History down in Atlanta, or Kennesaw, actually.
Oh, neat.
So I have a relationship with those folks for the past 3 years or so. Oh, let's see. So that was the first thing. And then Bernie has inspired me with the extension to his railroad. And so I have drawn up a plan for extending my Civil War railroad around my train room. So in the next few months, we'll see what happens on that.
Great. Great. Good. Thank you, David. LeBron, what's happening? Is Sherman done?
Atlanta is gone except for the roundhouse. I spent last week redoing my work area, which is behind me. Those of you who don't know, my work area is in a closet. And I was able to get some more space and expand it a little bit. So I spent all last week doing that.
So in a sense, you're coming out of the closet.
I'm coming out of the closet. I'm Confederate all the way.
That's great.
LeBron, what are you doing? I don't understand I haven't heard what you're up to.
I am dismantling my current layout and rebuilding it.
Wow.
So there was some things in it that just didn't satisfy me in the way it was operating. And as I began to study some of the photographs of Atlanta, I was not pleased with the way Atlanta looked to me. So I'm redoing it.
Oh, very good.
So what I've been doing is I dismantled it, but as I did so, I reworked some of the structures and have them ready. So when I rebuild, I just put them down and they'll be there.
All right.
What was fire involved?
Hmm?
Was fire involved?
It looks like that now.
Oh boy.
Oh, geez.
So I'm looking forward to getting it rebuilt and back up and operating.
So when's the expectation that you have you have like a timeline in terms of when you hope it'll be back up and running, like before the end of the year?
No, I would like to be by the end of the year, but I'm not certain it'll be completely done at that point.
Right, right. Yeah, I can't wait to see what you do with, well, that's right, you're gonna have a pull out instead of the elevator, right?
Yeah.
Right.
That's what my plans are at the moment.
Got it. Cool, thank you, LeBron. Let's see, Mr. Bopp, did you kind of give us your update, or is there anything else you'd like to tell us in terms of what you're working on?
I'd like to start by asking John Ott a question, because I'm talking about a book and I don't know about that. What would that be?
Oh, I've got I think you're familiar with the prints that I've been putting up on the internet ever so often. And that's right. You actually got a couple of them.
Yeah, a couple of them are on the wall behind me.
Yep. Well, I took 99 of them and put them into a book, wrote about 35,000 words of descriptive text about the history of the locomotives and who built them and their histories. And I've got about a 250-page book that I'm trying to find a legitimate, real publisher for.
Are they waiting for peer review now somewhere?
Well, it went through peer review with one publisher.
Wow.
Back about the first of the year. And it came back positive. And we were in the process of trading marked up contracts when the epidemic hit. And everybody at the Indiana University Press went home. And so far the project has just stalled.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I'm going to go out and find some alternative publishers.
Well, I've seen your work. I figured the problem was they couldn't find any peers to actually review it.
Well.
Well said.
Anyway, I do have a couple things I'm working on, and there's a passenger car. And all this is.
Oh. Wow. But yes, is that
that's in view, isn't it?
Yep.
Is that the old Rivarossi or Posher Lincoln car?
Well, it's the roof from one.
Ah.
And it's on. I think what happened was they came out with that back in the 60s. And maybe it occurred to someone that if they had a more normal passenger car, they might sell more of them. So they took the body and put a regular 2-truck underframe under it and a kind of an inauthentic looking roof. And these things show up at train shows, constantly. Well, the roof doesn't ring true. So I grabbed the roof off of one of the Lincoln cars and just put it on one of the regular 8-wheel coaches. And I think it makes a nice looking car for the era. I mean, now I have to find a prototype. Well, maybe I don't, but.
Pennsylvania Railroad.
that's
Yeah.
sort of what I was
Yeah.
thinking. And then I've got, well, I was lucky enough to pick up a couple of the Lincoln cars before the price on them seemed to go through the roof. I wouldn't want to spend $75 now for a roof, but so I was able to do that. And so I think I can have 3 of those, but we need something else. So, I mean, combines weren't a big thing, but this is the combine version of that same AHM car. And again, I got rid of that weird looking roof
Yeah.
and just put just a plain radial roof on it.
Nice.
I just used scribed wood siding. With the scribe side down, it bends easily.
Yeah.
And of course, if you're a real detail freak, you can get underneath and look up underneath and see boards, but that won't happen often. And then for a combine, which was maybe more of a workaday car than a coach, having a flat roof seemed all right. So that goes along with the coach and a couple more, and I'll have a nice train for the Lieutenant General Grant to pull.
Nice. Hey, John, is that roof styrene, I presume?
It's just wood.
Wood. Okay.
It's just wood siding. I decided to do it, and that's the first thing I could put my hands on, so that's what it is.
Looks great.
But I think styrene might work just as well. I put a little bit of a filler in under up under the roof there, because the top of the body is actually flat, and then I'll get some better looking handrails on it and better looking truss rods. And this version of the car has a nice looking pair of trucks if you're modeling 1870. And I might put this style of truck on because it's a short wheelbase and looks a little more authentic.
Beautiful. Nice work.
So that's something that's in progress at the moment. I won't mention how long it's been in progress, but it is in progress.
That's great. Thank you.
Been
Thank
there.
you. Hey, Don, what's going on with you?
Me?
Yes, sir.
Oh, okay. Wasn't sure you said that. Well, finally, after about a month, I've been able to stand up again. I had a problem with my knee the 1st of May and couldn't sit very long, couldn't stand very long. Finally had some surgery done, and I was in the midst, or just starting, really scenicking one of the sections on my railroad. Now I finally got back to it a couple of days ago. So
Are
I'm
you
working on that.
re-scenicking or is this new scenicking?
This is new.
No.
Over the last couple of months, I built about a dozen buildings to go in there. And so now I'm just trying to get them planted. And, you know, it's like most things I've found that you work on things for a couple of hours and you either have to let paint dry or let the glue dry. So while we're waiting for that stuff to dry, I've got a old locomotive kit. I basically was talking to a friend of mine and he said all those things never could run well. Well, I had one sitting on the shelf, so I thought I would put it together and prove it wrong. But anyway, things are coming together, and that's a good thing, I guess.
Yes, yes. Glad to see that you're feeling better too.
Yeah.
Good, good, good. Let's see. Bernie,
I'm muted, no.
should I
Have you
put
been
that
following
photo
my
up?
blog? If you've been following my blog, you know that I'm expanding the railroad. Let's see. Most of you were here. If you remember the HO layout that was in the crew lounge, that layout is now gone because of the flood. So DC, it's good that you're getting your drainage fixed. We re-engineered our drainage so that it seems to be more reliable. And the Falmouth is moving into the crew lounge, and I'll have about actually 50 feet from Stoneman's to Falmouth. although some of that's in a tunnel. And that first piece is done. Tom has a picture I gave him. Can you put
Yep.
that up?
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm trying to do. I thought I had that ready to
But
go.
I want those wagons, Jerry. I'm going to put in an order for 20 because, you know, I can do this, but this is too much work.
Yeah.
Also, you mentioned some other wagons. I think if they're an O scale, I definitely would be interested in them. Those 143rd wagons, I have a few of those. They're way too big.
Yeah. Yeah. That's wrong for
Yeah.
full scale.
Their figures are okay, but the wagons and the cannons are too big.
Yeah.
So let's see, what else are we doing?
Nope.
My plan was to be ready by the group meet in September, but I don't know if we're going to do that. So I'll still be ready. The nice thing is I've got a longer run, longer trains. I can now run a 10-car train or 9 if you have the passenger car. And there's no more crowding in by Falmouth. Remember when we had those 6-man crew or 3-man crews, and we had 6 people up there? That was way too crowded. So now Falmouth has a huge pit. You can put every crew in there if we wanted to. So I think overall the railroad's going to be much better, I hope. So that's what's going on.
Looks good on paper, Bernie.
What's
But
that?
your plant looks really good on paper. What you've shared it's looking really good.
It'll be more reliable too, I guess. That's the other thing. I had that sharp curve over by Falmouth. And if you guys remember, I blue flagged the turnout up there because it was never going to work. It was probably like 26-inch, maybe even 25-inch radius. And now that's all gone. It's all 30-inch minimum. And things are more reliable as they go through there. So more reliable, longer trains, longer layout, less crowding. It's win-win. I had to get rid of my HO layout, but hey, you know, that was planned to go anyway. So yeah, I'm pretty excited about it, and I was hoping that we could operate it in September, but if we don't, we'll do it next year.
Turn it into a work session.
Yeah, I actually had some people, you know, talking. Yesterday was my first in-house visitor. Paul Dolka stopped by, and we had our masks on. And he looked at the railroad and gave the thumbs up. And we ran some trains, and my track is really dirty right now. And even with batteries, you got to clean your track at least once a year. So it's been about 9 months since I cleaned the track. So I did a little bit of that yesterday, and some wheels, and things were running nice. So yeah, it's going to be good. I'm looking forward to you guys coming out and playing trains.
Yeah. Sorry I can't get this damn photo up, Bernie. Jesus.
Oh, well.
Oh, well. I do have the one.
Maybe can I do it? No,
Yeah.
I can't do share screen. How do you, oh, there it is, share screen. I have to open it first, right?
Yeah, open it in the viewer first.
Okay.
Hit share screen and pick the picture.
I'm just going to show you one. You probably, if you looked at my blog, you've seen it.
Yeah.
Let's see.
Looks a lot like Chip.
So let's see.
I missed
This
that.
is a fairly recent picture here. That's, by the way, that's a photo of John Vrana at Petersburg, in case he forgot he was there.
I don't think we can see that.
All right, hold it. I'm going to do share screen now, and then, oh boy, I've never done this before, guys, so I'm sorry.
It's all right. We learn as we go.
I have to open some preferences, so let's see. I have to allow Photoshop.
Not that one, right?
Here it is.
Yeah, that's Charlie. That's when I visited Charlie last year. We took this picture. Can you guys see that picture?
Yep.
Yeah, that's on Charlie's layout. That was a picture we took. Charlie, did I ever send that to you?
Oh, it looks pretty good.
It looks great. What are you talking about?
That's the lost tunnel on Summit Hill on Raccoon Mountain.
So it's not Tunnel Hill.
No, originally it was a cut, and they kept having landslides into the cut. And so they built this tunnel and then they buried it. It is spectacular. It's still up there. When we were in Chattanooga, when we had the meeting in Chattanooga, it still exists. You can go up there. It's about 10 miles from Chattanooga, and you can walk through this tunnel.
Cool.
You take it off.
I don't know if I'm not sure I know how to do share screen, but I will, if I hit Zoom.
It's all right. Let me see.
And I do share, open system preferences.
It might take you a couple minutes to figure that one out because it's.
Oh, anyway, just look at my blog. It's on my blog.
Yep.
But I did want, somebody mentioned the machine shops,
Charlie.
I recently discovered that Herman Hopp described a machine shop at Aquia Landing.
Okay.
And so that kind of got me excited because I like tools. And so I'm planning on buying all the little castings from a couple different manufacturers and making a machine shop down by the Y on my railroad where the engine house is. But Paul and I were talking about yesterday, we want to be able to see everything. So maybe do it without a roof or something like that. So anyway, that was kind of a neat. And the other thing I found that's a neat find was that Bel Air Farm. I was just trolling the historical roadside marker database, and they had a picture of this farm that was right next to the tracks down by Stoneman Station. And I said, oh my God, I was going to build a Worthington farm, which was where my wife's relatives were at the Battle of Monocacy. Wow. But it's more of a Maryland farm, brick with that, they have that distinctive porch. This was an actual collaborative farmhouse right next to my railroad. So I had to build it and I put a barn in and some other things. So.
Right.
And did you guys know that Civil War cows have horns? If you buy O-scale cows, they from Woodland Scenics, they don't have horns. So I put them on my railroad, and the hive mind told me, you got to have horns on your cows. That wasn't happening until like 1890.
Whoa.
So I had to go make horns for all my little cows.
Are you serious?
So now I have horny cows. I am dead serious.
Horny cows?
I now have horny cows, man.
But they look nice, Bernie.
Well, and what, you know how I did it? I laser cut the little,
of course,
little curly key, whatever you want to
In
call it.
HO scale, you can use straight pins and make them out of them.
Yeah, somebody said wire, but I soaked them in super glue and then sanded them and stuck them right on.
So does that mean all the cows that I have on my layout need horns?
Do you have horns on them?
DC, I don't think so, do they?
They have short horns.
Short horns.
Well, that's okay.
Shorter horns.
Okay.
Good.
Those are okay. They're not long horns. Those are down in Texas.
Right. Good.
But
Okay.
you know, I did some research on cattle breeds and some other things, and they sell Hereford cows, the Woodland Scenics. So I kind of painted them to look a little different. And unfortunately, Joel, close your ears. I had to castrate the bulls because they didn't have bulls, they had steers. And the bulls on these Woodland Scenics, the balls on the bulls are humongous. It was a big job.
Oh,
Now I have horny cows with no balls.
God, you can't make that up. That's great. Well, that was a great check-in, Bernie. Thank you. That was very good. Cool. So let's see. Let me move on to Ron. And Ron, I definitely have yours ready to go. So you want me to just pull up the screen and start the show? You're on mute.
Yeah, so I'm ready to go.
Great. Let's see. Boom. Boom. Visible?
Yeah, I can see it. Is it visible to? This is Martin's painting of Martinsburg In fact, the gentleman those of you that went to the Martinsburg Harper's Ferry that spoke to us actually worked with Mort when he painted this picture, this painting. And I have another view of it later on in the slides that I put together. But so I'm modeling Martinsburg in the spring of 1861. Martinsburg, the B&O Railroad, which began construction in 1828, reached Martinsburg in about 1847 or 42. The Berkeley Hotel was actually constructed in 1847 and became the B&O station in Martinsburg. And in 1849, they built what you can see here in part is a shop, a roundhouse, and a number of facilities, machine shops, and etc. So that's basically what I'm modeling. This is the location of the famous train theft, where approximately 36 trains were absconded by Stonewall Jackson and taken down the Pike Road to Winchester. Martin Kunstler also has a photo of this. This is actually Jackson at that time. So you can go to the next slide. So this is a map of Martinsburg made by the Army Corps of Engineering in 1861. If you go ahead and go to the next slide. So this is zoomed in, and this is essentially the area that I'm modeling. It's a stretch of the track that includes the machine shops and the roundhouse, the Berkeley Hotel. There's what was a Colonnade Bridge, which a bridge of piers is what they refer. Jackson would destroy that and burn it. And then a number of mills and a distillery and foundries along the track. And so this is the area that I'm modeling. And I have to model it before June of 1861, because in June of 1861, Jackson would come back after he stole all the trains and burn everything to the ground. So all that remained was stone structures. One of the things interesting, if you look at the bottom where it says machine shop and the roundhouse, there's actually a second roundhouse that appears to the right of the one that there's another one. To go to the other way, Tom. I see where your pointer. Yeah, you can see above the word shop, there's another roundhouse. But talking to the historians in Martinsburg, and I've been there 3 or 4 times, archaeologists have actually gone in and tried to find the footprint for that roundhouse, and they can't. So they don't know why this was actually drawn on. They don't believe it actually existed. So I'm only modeling one roundhouse that it existed during the Civil War. So go ahead, and these are the plans that I'm working on, although since I sent them, you can go ahead and go to the next slide. So go back one. Yeah. So what I began with when I began, go back to the previous one where the plans are laying on the floor. So these are sandboard maps that have been actually blown up to HO scale size. And I began laying them on the floor in my basement and putting together a puzzle and pieces just to see sort of how this would lay out. Since then, I've removed them, and I've actually found a better way to do this. So if we go to the next slide, which is actually the plans that I've begun to put together using any rail, which I've played with for a number of years. I've actually, I'm fortunate to live between 2 universities, University of Michigan and Eastern Michigan University, so I've access to some unique facilities. So I found a guy that'll print this in 1-to-1 size for about $40. So I'm actually going to have him print this out. I've made some significant changes to the upper right, or to the right of the screen in that area there since I sent this to Tom. But essentially, this is a 29-foot area long by 9 foot deep. And the bench work extends about 3 foot, and it's just a folded a dog bone. I wanted to have the opportunity to be able to run trains just in general along the main line, but as you can see, obviously there's a lot of switching to be done. And one of the things that, from looking at photographs and period photographs, the track work isn't quite as neatly structured in the Civil War as it appears, as the only way any rail will let you do it. Any rail, as DC indicated, prevents you from making mistakes, and it won't let you do certain things with the rail, so it prevents those kind of mistakes. But so this is the plan. The other thing that's fascinating about it is I've acquired all the National Historic Records for the city of Martinsburg, and so I've had a lot of photos. Like I said, I've made 3 or 4 trips to Martinsburg, including our trip. You can go ahead and go to the next slide, Tom. And this is a photograph of the Roundhouse in 1858. And you can see why I have an interest in building camelbacks. Jerry and Al and I were working on that project. The real purpose for the B&O, or at least the stretch in Martinsburg, was as a coal. And you can see the pod hoppers in the screen. I think it's kind of neat that they brought everybody out. And that would be the roundhouse that Jackson would burn to the ground. The ones that exist that are there today, again, the Kunstler's picture is next. And what's interesting, having been there, I know where the two photos were taken, or the painting was taken from. So the photo that you saw is completely on the other side of the hotel. There's a little bluff that you can stand on, and I've stood there and looked across to get an estimate of where the roundhouse actually stood relative to what's there today. This is on the opposite side, where you're looking down the tracks, actually towards Harper's Ferry. And then there's the next print is a Harper's Weekly engraving of Martinsburg in 1861. There's another engraving. I actually have an entire collection of Harper's Weekly, and it's a fascinating newspaper through the Civil War. A lot of interesting images. You can go to the next one, Tom.
Wow.
And this is, again, the top picture is actually Martinsburg after it was burned down. So you can see the shells of buildings that were in place and in downtown Martinsburg, and the Tuscarora River, which is the Opequon River, which is in the lower right, which is what the Colonnade Bridge went across. You can go ahead and go to the next slide.
Oh. Huh. Why is that not moving? Oh, I know why. Hang on. Where's that not going? Oh, wait a minute. That should go. Ah. Is that
so
it?
This is actually a photograph of a Colonnade Bridge at the time of the Civil War. This doesn't exist. It's a viaduct now. There is a road that runs underneath it. I'll be rebuilding that. This is the Berkeley Hotel as it stands today. It's the oldest train station that's been in continuous operation in the United States. It was built in 1847. With the exception of this the far right in the screen, you'll see that's actually a bridge that will cross over the CS tracks and allow you to get into the roundhouse complex that exists today. Go ahead. This is the Haniss Distillery, which was to the east side of the roundhouse facility. The only thing that existed at the time of the Civil War were the 2 smaller buildings to the left and the ones across the track, and you can see the tracks. Those buildings were present at the Civil War. And the fascinating thing is portions of those buildings still exist, and they're out in the woods. And I found an old access road and drove back in there and found this entire facility that's just sort of overgrown in the woods. That's still present and still physically there.
Ron,
there's a mill that's present. Those buildings are still present today.
All these buildings, you can see like a footprint with all of these?
Some of them are footprints and some of them are actually standing. The one stack, the stack that's closest to us, it still stands. It's still there. And that building and portions of that building, the building to the left is actually a granary. It's where they stored grain for the distillery. And the word is that Martinsburg was occupied 37 times because they would occupy the city, and then whoever was in command would discover that there was the distillery to the east side of town, and they would quickly not occupy town.
What type of liquor? What type of liquor?
That I couldn't tell you. And then I've got and then the map of the distillery.
That's important.
You can go to the next one.
I
Go
was
ahead,
just
Tom.
curious, are you planning on building much of that distillery?
Yes.
Wow, cool.
Yeah, I'm planning on scratch building most of that.
Ooh.
This is a foundry that still exists. These are other pictures of mills that are still that still are there. The red brick at the top is where the roof was extended later on. But all this facility still exists. And one of the interesting things about this mill is rather than the water wheel sitting to the side of the structure,
Sorry.
a portion of the structure was actually built over the stream, and the water wheel was inside in the middle of the structure. The interesting thing about this building, and I have USB drives full of photos from Martinsburg. The interesting thing about this particular building is it's just been purchased by a developing company. I've been able to access interior pictures of this because they put it up on the realtor site. His plans are to restore this, to put the mill back into operation.
Wow.
And to turn this into a restaurant.
Wow.
So it's really fascinating. So I'm thinking I'm going to get a chance to go inside this thing. I've trespassed a number of times to take pictures. And the other two buildings are mills that are still present. And one of them's actually a little park that you can go to and it still operates and functions. And I'll be modeling and building those out of hydrocal. I've already experimenting with making my own castings and working with a couple of people who do casting work to reconstruct those. Next slide. And these are the building in the upper left-hand corner is called the Washington Hotel, and the building to the right, which is a residency. Those are along the railroad track. I think if you look in the upper right-hand corner of the white building, you'll actually see the lights from the railroad because they sit back right up. These actually predate the Civil War. They were actually there at the time of the Revolutionary War when George Washington was surveying the western portion of Virginia. He actually stayed in the brown structure, and the one on the right, the white structure, they both sit side by side right next to the tracks, and they're still present today, which is sort of the fascinating part is modeling and building the models and doing those sort of things and thinking about the plans. But the real enjoyable part, or the other aspect of it that's really enjoyable, is doing all the research. And it's like, hey, we're going to go on a road trip. My wife's like, where are we going? Well, we're going to go to Martinsburg, West Virginia. And it's like, we're not going to Disneyland. We're not going to the tropical. No, we're going to go look at old buildings and take pictures of them. Fortunately, my son now lives in Virginia, so I can make an excuse and drive halfway down and stop and go in. And I've gotten to know the historians. There's a historian at Shenandoah University there that's close, that Don Silva, who's been real helpful in finding information and pieces of information. So I just put those photos up just to tell you, or just to show you some of the things. I've got lots and lots of photos of lots of buildings and structures and homes that are still present. And I've got all of the National Registry, Historical Registry files. And I can actually go through the Sanborn maps that I have, look at the address, and go back to these historical records and be able to get a description and know when the home was built, and they'll know if it's appropriate for the period for me to actually think about building a structure, and then go try to get a picture of it, or see if I already have a picture of it. So that's the other part of the modeling part, and the building of the track and the plans and those sort of things. It's the historical piece and finding out about the buildings and who owned these structures and what businesses were they, and what they're. And in fact, some of them you listen to the evolution of what they were at the time of the Civil War and what they became now, or they're, like I said, they're back in the woods covered with overgrowth, but the structure's still there. And so that's just when we made the trip to Alexandria, and John Varna led us off into the woods to go look at on these little hikes. It was like that was the fascinating part of the entire trip, to be able to do those sort of things and do that kind of historical research. So that's Martinsburg, West Virginia. So that's what I'm up to. The plans are about to get blown up and made life size, and I'll start building bench work this summer.
Question for you, John, Ron. You said these lights here, are these the lights you were talking about in the right photo?
Yes.
They're
in the
pre,
bottom floor. So
they're-
so the tracks are right there. So
But
these buildings,
these are contemporary lights,
they're
though, right?
contemporary, yes.
Yep, yep.
Yeah, these aren't period photos. These were taken recently.
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. Got it.
But that's how close they are to the track. So they'll line up and are located. in the
When do you
plant.
start building bench work?
This summer.
Wow, cool. That sounds great. Jeez. Any questions, anybody?
Thank you for sharing.
Yeah, excellent.
Cool.
I enjoy all the historical research and stuff that goes into that.
Yeah, my wife loves it when I say we're going to go on a road trip and it's actually, to go visit some obscure out of the way place. We have a ghost town here just north of us called Muskogee. It was a huge lumber mill back, actually dating back before the Civil War, and then the 1900s, late 1900s, early 20s. All that's left is a cemetery, but the cemetery is really cool as well. So, yeah, it's out in the middle.
I've walked the Martinsburg Cemetery.
Have you?
That's fast. I actually like visiting cemeteries, especially the older, the better.
Yeah.
Those are fascinating pieces of history.
Yeah, you talk about the interest that we have from different points of view, whether it's historical or modeling or what have you. And yeah, for me, one of the big things was the hunt for the information and the discovery along the way of things you couldn't have imagined. So when DC, put that little ad in a model railroader magazine back in the 90s, never could have imagined that we'd be able to pull together such a variety and array of different experts and masters in their craft. So it's always a real joy for me, because there's always something to learn from a different perspective with all of you. And, it makes the hobby just so much fun. And, after this, I got a conference call at 9:45 tonight till 10:15, but I'll be on the railroad right after that, working back on the mill. Absolutely. Absolutely. This is great. Any other questions or comments from anybody?
Yeah, Tom?
Yeah.
I'd just like to mention that a couple of years ago, we toured, when we were at Harper's Ferry, we toured the Roundhouse at Martinsburg. And Ron was instrumental in putting that together for us. But that was such an interesting tour to go see that. That's what kind of launched Alan on doing that Hayes 10-wheeler for the B&O Hayes 10-wheeler. I think Ron has the only running copy of that at this point. Yes. And the other one in kit form.
Yes. Yes.
But yeah, that visit to Martinsburg was the inspiration for that. So
yeah, I was wondering if that tour, and I didn't get to go on that tour, but I was wondering if it was, at some point in the game, kids got in there and torched the thing, arson, and burned one of those. Did a lot of damage to at least one of the roundhouses, to where essentially there's only one roundhouse left.
Correct.
Right.
Correct. The facilities, the older one, they actually set pallets on fire inside of it. So all that remains is a piece of the wall. The one that was reconstructed in 1867 still stands. And even if it's a few years beyond the Civil War, what was fascinating was to look at the 19th century engineering that went into those structures, and you go, this isn't too far off the way they did it, the way it would have had to have been constructed in the 1860s. I mean, just the mere fact those little blocks of wood that they used to make the floor out of, that were covered with creosote, so that they wouldn't damage the sharpened tools I mean, it was just to see that and go, no, I have one of those that sits here in my office, and a brick. But, those sort of little pieces of engineering, when we went to Savannah and we're walking around that facility, and just to see the engineering and the steam boilers, and it's like, how did they do these things? What did they do?
Right.
I mean, all those curiosities about And then you do something, and then you find out the bulls have to have horns, or it's not prototypical. Okay, so I mean, you do all these things, and then it's like, come to think of it, and I do historical work. In fact, I'm working on a book right now. But one of the fascinating things I found out as I was writing the book on the history of Eastern Michigan University was the real debate that took place at the university in like the 1850s about the locations of buildings relative to where outhouses would be placed because of the prevailing winds. And it's like, these were actually documented in official university documents of the period. And you go, we wouldn't think about that. And you wouldn't think about those kind of things, or horns on cows, until you really start digging into the material and doing the research and thinking about it. And then, then somebody shows up and says, no, that's not right. That's not the way they did it.
That Mort Kunstler painting did have the oxen did have longer horns on them.
Thanks.
I just checked. All my oxen have horns. Okay.
Oh man.
You can sleep well tonight.
A livestock car with oxen in it, because I was the work train out by Manassas. They were hauling the oxen out because that was shortage, because that was your heavy tractors in the Civil War. And the livestock cars, I think that were on the U.S. military railroad, they had so few. I think that was mostly to transport draft animals for their own use, because of so much of their operations being in Morgan's Confederacy.
I got to ask, how do you castrate an N-scale bull?
These came these came pre-castrated. So being a good Texan and actually New Mexican, that's really the only place I ever had mountain oysters, was when I was working out on a ranch in New Mexico when I was 12 and 13. Found out that being a cowboy mostly consisted of digging holes and bucking hay.
God. I do have a question on, it's somewhat related to transport of horses. In one of Kunstler's paintings, it's where he has Jackson mounting trains to head to Manassas, and there's a flat car with some ropes around the posts, and there's horses boarding a flat car. Would they have boarded horses on a flat car and transport them? Does anybody know? It seems like it would be.
I would say that the livestock cars they had on the ONA, Orange and Alexandria, weren't much better. They were flat cars with some just rough rails built around, and then they kind of built them up a little bit. And that would strike me as logical, because normally horses walked and supplies rode.
Okay. So the
horses move faster than the trains.
Yeah, because I was actually considering doing that, building a few flat cars with bracing around some stakes and just populating it with some horses. But I thought that would be awfully uncomfortable for the horses, but maybe not. They move slow enough. It wouldn't.
The trains weren't going much. I don't think the trains were going too fast.
Right. Holy cows. Oh, Bernie. Well, I wish I could try to pull that up. Bernie sent me a photo of horny cows.
Fantastic cows. Yeah.
What's that?
Good looking cow.
Yeah.
Good looking. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't see it.
Gotta download.
It's in the chat.
Look in your chat window. It's attached. It's an attached file in chat.
Clicking on chat.
Yeah, click on chat.
This is download. Horny cows.
Wow.
I didn't get the downloads.
They look good, Bernie. I'll be dang. They look a little long, but that's okay.
Well, the cows that they sell are too fat for Civil War cows.
Oh,
If you look at the Civil War cow pictures, they look pretty lean.
Yeah.
So
right.
Yeah.
I
Wow.
read a story about the beefsteak raid that happened at City Point, and the Confederates stole about 2,000 cattle. And the problem was they didn't have anything to feed them. So a lot of them were wasted because they had to eat them right away.
Yeah.
So the men had steaks and ribs and whatever you get from a cow right away. And then after about 3 days, it was all gone. And they were back to starving.
Well, they shipped them out on the trains up to the trenches, so the Union soldiers had fresh steak to eat, and the poor old Confederates, they're eating ground corn cob.
There's a picture of a herd of cattle, 10,000 cattle, on the Mall of Washington, D.C., getting ready to cross the Long Bridge.
Wow. That'd be cool.
It's a lot of cows. I have a conductor's report from Washington, D.C., and on the back they write, oh, by the way, we backed into a cow today and killed a cow. So I always thought it was funny because imagine D.C. now killing a cow in D.C. That would be a big event.
Let's not go there. I could say some things on that.
That's probably
Guys,
a good thing.
could you see those chat pictures?
Mm.
I'll put another one on the chat thing then.
Yeah.
In case you haven't seen the farm, this is what the farmhouse looks like.
Let me see if I can pull that up.
There's the farmhouse. So, oh yeah, it's loading. Okay. Yeah, so the farm, I found some records on that farm where he filed a claim after the war for what the damage that was done to his farm. So that gives you a pretty good idea of what he had on his farm. And with the one picture, I was able to imagineer some things. So I wanted to build a farm, and I finally got my farm. Because I grew up in the South, South Brooklyn. Wildlife was mice, rats, and pigeons. That was wildlife.
Yeah. All right. Cool.
Nice.
So you can see it, right? You got to
Download it.
double click
You
on it.
download it and then you open it.
Yeah, that's what I did.
Yep.
Nice.
So anyway, that's all. That's pretty much done. I still got to do joint bars. I think that I bought some barebacked horses that they're going to be in that other paddock, because the general had his headquarters in that house. So I'm assuming that the general and their ADCs have their horses in this little paddock with the saddles off. So then I've got to cut some saddles probably off a 28 millimeter, which Jerry mentioned earlier, the wargaming guys. They have plastic horses that have saddles, so it can be able to remove the saddle if you want and just drape it on a sole horse or something.
Good.
Anybody know what kind of saddle Grant rode?
Well, I don't know. The McClellan saddle was common for the cat.
Yeah, I know, but there were other types. Grimsley.
Yeah. This isn't Grant. This is General Whipple. No one's ever heard of General Whipple because he got killed at Chancellorsville.
I was thinking of City Point. I'm sorry.
Oh, for City Point, yeah. There's a picture of Grant's horse at City Point. You can get a picture of it.
Is there?
Yeah. Remind me. Send me an email. I have it. I'll send it to you.
Okay.
I have it in my file somewhere.
I have McClellan's saddle when I was doing mounted cavalry, doing Civil War reenacting. I've got my own, but it's an enlisted man's saddle with, the rawhide and just leather skirts.
Yeah.
That one picture of Grant on his horse, kind of like a silhouette of him on his horse at City Point. There's one of them that's out there that's a fake one that's like been photoshopped or whatever of him on his horse at some other location.
Oh,
I had another question regarding those Winans. Is that what you have, Joel? Is that what he built? Not Joel, Ron. Did Al build a Winans camel?
Yes. Oh, the 8-wheel camel. Yeah.
Are those
So we
available
actually
by
ran
Shapeways?
one. Yes.
They are.
So he ran it. So what actually runs is the chassis. So that's what we have up and running, and that's what operates. I have that here, and then we have all the Shapeway parts.
Yeah, Tom, those are not Shapeways. They're
Where'd you build? Yeah, okay, that's right. You didn't.
Tom.
Yeah.
The chassis were done by Shapeways, but the superstructures and cabs we did on a printer here.
Yeah, your son did those, didn't he, at his place?
Yeah, if they're white. If they're gray, I did them.
Okay. Yep.
So if somebody wanted that, they have to go through you to get those parts, and Shapeways for the others?
Yes. Yes, none of it is actually posted on a store in Shapeways. It's they were private STL files that we had printed up. And when Al and I were working on that, and that was actually the last project that we were able to work on together. And anyway,
yeah,
I've still got all the files, and I've got a complete kit of one that I keep looking at and saying one of these days I might put it together, but I'm busy doing a lot of other stuff. And you know, I like 440s better than camels, and so it's kind of sad part.
You could send it here.
Send it to
do that
DC.
because what we did is they were built around brass castings for the chassis with axles and driver wheels that came from the UK, the Romford axles and drivers, and they just worked out beautiful for that locomotive. The Thatcher Perkins is also done that way.
Right, right. Have you run that locomotive, Ron?
The Thatcher Perkins?
No, the
other one. No, not since I was at Al's. The last time I was with Al, we ran it up there.
Got it. Yep.
Right now it's just sitting in a box.
Right, right. Got it.
By the way, I'm calling the creek underneath the swamp on the extension Mueller's Creek.
Cool.
Right.
So
good. Yeah, I think
a little freelancing, but what the heck?
Right. I think probably a lot of us are going to have some tribute to Al on our layout somewhere in some form or another. Yeah. Yeah.
He has a clock shop in Atlanta.
Ah. That's great. That's great. That's great.
Hey, Chip, I sent you that file. Well, send it to everybody.
Oh, thank you.
Good. So we got a couple of minutes here. Is there one thing I like to do is just go ahead, Bernie.
No, I was just saying it was a big horse.
Oh, so in the closing minutes here, I just want to get a sense from you guys how this played out for you. I recorded, I think, most of it, if not all of it, this time. But is this meeting expectations? Is this gratifying? Is there any feedback for me or the format?
I think this has been great.
Cool.
Yeah, it ran a lot smoother than last time, Tom.
Yes.
How often are you planning on doing these then?
Every couple of weeks.
Great.
Yep. Yep. And you know, if somebody's interested in doing a little presentation like Ron just did or Jerry did last week, I'll be doing one on the mill in one of the upcoming ones. Just let me know if you want. Send me the PowerPoint, and that'll be the feature presentation. And I like just checking in with people, seeing what you're up to. I mean, part of this is to hopefully, you know, keep fueling the fire and the juices to keep on doing whatever you're doing and keep the spirit up, and you know, share things with people that can have an appreciation for what we do, because we're all in like these little niches, and sometimes it feels like we're as scarce as hen's teeth. So it's good to have some comrades in arms, so to speak. Cool.
Very good.
Good.
Question?
Yeah, Bernie.
Do you think the September meet will happen?
I'm planning on it. I'm waiting to see, you know, by July what happens, you know, toward the end of July. I'm in touch with the folks at the hotel. I think they're still planning on it. We haven't been in touch with any of our key players in those places, like the museum people and what have you, but we'll follow up with them in about a month or so.
They haven't gotten back to me yet.
Right. Right.
I got an apology email from the gentleman who runs the layout at the museum in not Baltimore, the other one, Ellicott City Museum. Yeah, and they were kind of planning on it, but we were going to try to work out the details. And the last email I had was an apology for him not getting back, and we'll talk later. I haven't heard anything yet, and I kind of figured we needed to see what was going on from our end before we get them to plan too much more.
Yep. At least he got back to you, so you can just tell him we're still looking at it, and we'll follow up with him later. Good. Okay. Gentlemen, always a pleasure. Great to see you, and you'll be hearing from me, and this will be posted on YouTube.
Okay.
All right.
Thanks, guys. Bye-bye.
Guys.
Enjoy.
Everybody.
Happy
Bye.
Good to see you, John.
Bye, guys.
Thanks, Tom. This is great.
Thanks, Sean.
Welcome.
Good night.
Good night, y'all.
Night.
Night.